My name is Seraphina Cole and I am 26 years old. On the night of my college graduation, the man who raised me stood up at the family dinner table, pointed at me in front of everyone, and said, "Don't expect a dime from me. I've been subsidizing a stranger's kid for 22 years and I'm done." He slid his credit card across the table to my stepbrother and told him to order whatever he wanted. Then he looked at me and said, "You can split the check with your waiter friends." He thought that was the final word. He thought I'd cry, grab my diploma, and disappear into some mediocre life. He didn't know I'd spent the last 3 years building a case. And he definitely didn't know that my biological father, the man whose name he cursed every time he lost a contract, was parked outside the restaurant waiting for my signal. But before I tell you what happened that night, I need to take you back 14 years. To the first time I understood that something about me was fundamentally wrong in Gerald Ashford's eyes. I was 12. It was the county science fair at Ridgewood Middle School in Charlotte, North Carolina. I had built a working model of a water filtration system using sand, gravel, and activated charcoal. My teacher, Mrs. Paxton, told me it was the best project she'd seen in 15 years. My mother drove me there that morning. She helped me carry the display board through the gymnasium doors and set it up on table 14. She wore her green cardigan, the one with the loose button she never fixed, and she smelled like the vanilla lotion she kept on her nightstand. She promised she'd come back for the judging at 3 o'clock. Gerald was supposed to come too. He'd said he would at breakfast. But when the judges arrived and started making their rounds, the chair next to my mother was empty. Again. I won second place. A ribbon and a $50 gift card to the bookstore. When we got home, I found Gerald in the living room watching my stepbrother Colton's travel baseball highlights on his laptop. Colton was 10 and already being groomed for select teams, private coaching sessions, and weekend tournaments that cost $400 a pop. "How was the science thing?" Gerald asked without looking up. "I got second place." "Cool." That was it. "Cool." My mother caught my eye from the hallway. Her lips pressed together the way they always did when she was swallowing something she wanted to say. She shook her head slightly, a tiny motion that meant, "Not now, not here, let it go." I went to my room and closed the door. I didn't cry. I'd already learned that crying in that house was a waste of energy. Nobody came to check on you when you cried. At least, nobody named Gerald. That night I couldn't sleep. I went downstairs for water and I heard them in the kitchen. Gerald and my mother, voices low but sharp. "You promised her you'd be there," my mother said. "I had calls, Diana. The Henderson project is falling apart." "You always have calls when it's Sarah. You never have calls when Colton has a game." "Colton is my son." Silence. Then, quieter. "Seraphina is your daughter too." "No. She isn't. And we both know why." I stood in the hallway with my bare feet on the cold tile, and I felt something shift inside me. Not break, shift. Like a bone that sets at the wrong angle and grows crooked from that point forward. I went back upstairs without the water. I didn't understand the full meaning of what Gerald said that night, but I understood the math. Colton equaled love. I equaled obligation, and obligations have expiration dates. The disparity between Colton and me wasn't subtle. It was financial, emotional, and meticulously documented. By the time I was 16, I had a notebook hidden in my closet with every single difference recorded in blue ink. Colton got a $1,200 gaming PC for his 13th birthday. I got a $25 gift card to Target for mine. Colton's baseball equipment, updated every season, totaled roughly $3,000 a year. When I needed $180 for AP exam fees junior year, Gerald told me to ask the school for a fee waiver. Colton had his own room with a TV, a mini fridge, and a gaming chair. I shared a room with storage boxes until I was 14, when my mother finally convinced Gerald to let me use the small room above the garage. It had no heat in the winter and no air conditioning in the summer. Charlotte's summers hit 95 degrees regularly. Gerald removed me from the family phone plan when I turned 15. He told my mother it was a budget decision. That same month, Colton got the new iPhone, no questions asked. I bought a $30 prepaid phone from Walmart with money I earned babysitting. I got a job at 16, waitressing at a diner called the Morning Bell on Providence Road, 4 shifts a week after school. Minimum wage plus tips. I saved every dollar I could. I paid for my own clothes, my own school supplies, my own prom dress, a $40 find at Goodwill that I altered myself using a YouTube sewing tutorial. My mother offered to help, but she didn't have access to money. Gerald controlled the finances completely. Her name wasn't even on the checking account. My mother died on a Friday in October. Ovarian cancer. She was 44. I was 16. The diagnosis came in March. By July, she was bedridden. I spent that summer sitting beside her in the hospital, reading to her from the novels she loved, old Agatha Christie paperbacks with cracked spines and yellowed pages. Gerald visited twice. Both times he spent most of the visit on his phone in the hallway. A week before she died, my mother asked the nurse to close the door. She gripped my hand with a strength that surprised me, given how thin she'd become. "There's a box," she whispered. "In the attic, behind the Christmas decorations. It's a brown shoebox with a rubber band around it." "Okay." "Inside there's a letter. And some other things. Documents. Don't open it yet." "When?" "When you turn 18. Promise me, Sarah." 18. "Why 18? "Because by then you'll be strong enough to do something about it." I promised. I didn't understand what I was promising. I would have promised her anything. She died 6 days later. I was holding her hand. Gerald was downstairs in the cafeteria getting coffee. Gerald married Vanessa 11 months after the funeral. Vanessa was a real estate stager he'd met through work, polished and performative, the kind of woman who posted "blessed" under every photo of herself. Her first project as stepmother was redecorating the house. My mother's things disappeared, room by room, her books, her photos, her green cardigan with the loose button. I rescued the shoebox from the attic the night before Vanessa's movers came for the Christmas decorations. I hid it under a floorboard in my garage room. And I waited. 2 years. That's how long I kept my promise to a dead woman. On my 18th birthday, I opened the box. It was a Sunday morning. Gerald and Vanessa had taken Colton to a baseball showcase in Raleigh. The house was empty. I sat on the floor of my garage room with the shoebox on my lap, pulled off the rubber band, and lifted the lid. Inside, a sealed envelope with my name in my mother's handwriting. A photograph of a man I didn't recognize, tall with dark hair and sharp cheekbones. A copy of a DNA test dated 2006, the year I was born. And a business card for an attorney named Margaret Liu at Liu & Associates, in Uptown Charlotte. I opened the letter first. "My darling Seraphina, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you're old enough to understand what I couldn't tell you while I was alive. Gerald is not your biological father. Before I married him, I was in a relationship with a man named Julian Cross. We were together for 2 years. He moved to Atlanta for a job opportunity, and we lost touch. I didn't realize I was pregnant until after he left. Gerald was already proposing. I made the worst decision of my life. I married Gerald and let him believe you were his. He found out the truth when you were 4. He discovered the DNA test I'd kept hidden. He's known for 22 years. He stayed because he didn't want the scandal. He works in commercial real estate development. Reputation is everything in that world. But he punished you for my mistake, and I let him. I am so sorry, Sarah. I was afraid. I was financially dependent. I had no family of my own to turn to. None of that excuses what I allowed to happen to you. Julian never knew about you. That was my second worst decision. He deserved to know. You deserve to know him." The attorney, Margaret Liu, has copies of everything. She was my lawyer. She knows the full situation, including the trust fund. Your grandmother, my mother, left you $160,000 in a trust when she died. Gerald was named trustee because I was too sick to manage it. I don't trust him with it, but I had no other option at the time. Watch the money, Sarah. Watch it carefully. You are not a mistake. You are the best decision I ever made, even if I handled everything else wrong. I love you more than I can say, Mom. I read the letter 4 times. Then I picked up the photograph. The man in the picture had my eyes. The exact same shade of dark brown, almost black, with the same slight upward tilt at the outer corners. Julian Cross. I typed his name into Google that night. The results made me dizzy. Julian Cross, founder and CEO of Meridian Development Group, one of the largest commercial real estate firms in the Southeast. Headquartered in Atlanta with offices in Charlotte, Nashville, and Miami. Estimated portfolio value $1.8 billion. There were photos. Julian at fundraising galas. Julian shaking hands with the governor of Georgia. Julian at a groundbreaking ceremony with a gold-plated shovel and a crowd of suits behind him. In every picture, he looked confident, composed, successful. And he looks like me. Then I found the detail that made everything click into place. A Charlotte Business Journal article from 2019. Meridian Development Group has outbid Ashford Commercial Partners in 30 of the last 5 major contracts in the Charlotte metro area, continuing a pattern of competitive dominance that has frustrated smaller firms. Ashford Commercial Partners. Gerald's company. Gerald's life's work. Gerald's identity. And the man consistently beating him was my biological father. I almost laughed. Almost. Gerald hated Julian Cross. I'd heard him ranting about that arrogant prick from Atlanta at dinner parties, blaming Julian for every lost deal, every missed opportunity. And every single day, Gerald looked across the breakfast table at Julian Cross's daughter and saw the face of the man who was destroying him professionally. No wonder he hated me. I didn't reach out to Julian immediately. I spent 4 months preparing. I contacted Margaret Liu first. She confirmed everything in the letter, including the trust fund. She also told me something my mother hadn't mentioned. Gerald had withdrawn $52,000 from my trust over the past 5 years, claiming child-rearing expenses. Margaret had been tracking the withdrawals but couldn't act without my authorization, since I'd been a minor. I authorized her to begin documenting everything. In March of my freshman year at UNC Charlotte, where I'd earned a scholarship through grades and essays and sheer stubbornness, I wrote a letter to Julian Cross. Not an email. A handwritten letter sent to Meridian Development Group headquarters in Atlanta. I included a copy of my mother's letter, the DNA test from 2006, and a single request: would he be willing to take a new test to confirm? 3 weeks later, his attorney called. Julian was willing. The test was conducted at a certified lab in Charlotte. Results came back in 10 days. Probability of paternity, 99.98%. The phone call came on a Tuesday evening. I was in my dorm room eating ramen and studying for a midterm. Seraphina. His voice was deeper than I'd imagined, with a slight southern cadence. This is Julian Cross. I just received the results. I couldn't speak. I didn't know, he said. Your mother never told me. If I had known, even for a day, I would have been there. I need you to believe that. I believe you, I whispered. I've spent the last 3 weeks reading your mother's letter over and over. I've been angry at myself for leaving Charlotte without looking back. I've been angry at her for not telling me. But mostly, I've been angry at the years I missed. Me too. I want to fix that. Whatever you need. However you want to do this, I'm here. We met for the first time the following Saturday at a coffee shop in Noda, the arts district in Charlotte. He was taller than his photos suggested. 6'2" with silver streaking through his dark hair. He wore a simple navy blazer and no tie. He looked nervous, which somehow made me less nervous. We talked for 3 hours. He told me about his business, his divorce 5 years ago, his apartment in Buckhead. I told him about my mother, about Gerald, about working at the Morning Bell, about the garage room with no heat. His jaw tightened when I described the AP exam fees Gerald refused to pay. His eyes went dark when I mentioned the phone plan. How much did you say he took from the trust? Julian asked quietly. $52,000. And what did you actually receive from him? Nothing. I paid for everything myself. Julian set down his coffee cup very carefully, the way someone does when they're trying not to throw it. I'd like to help you get that money back. I have a lawyer. Margaret Liu. I know Margaret. She's excellent. But I have resources she doesn't. Let me support this. Not with money, with information. What kind of information? The kind Gerald doesn't want anyone to see. Over the next 3 years, I built my life, slowly, deliberately, on my own terms. I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in business administration. I worked my way up from waitress to shift manager to assistant manager at a restaurant group in Charlotte. I saved money. I studied for the GMAT. I applied to MBA programs at Duke and Wake Forest. And in the background, quietly, Julian and Margaret Liu were building a case. Julian's team uncovered things I hadn't imagined. Gerald had not only drained $52,000 from my trust, he had also taken out a $75,000 line of credit against the trust's remaining assets to fund Colton's travel baseball and a kitchen renovation for Vanessa. The total damage was $127,000. He'd forged my mother's signature on 3 separate authorization forms. Margaret also found an email Gerald had sent to his personal attorney in 2018 when I was 12. Subject: non-biological dependent options. The email asked about legally minimizing his financial obligations to me, including whether he could redirect my grandmother's trust to Colton if I were removed from the household before turning 18. He'd been planning to discard me since I was 12. Since before my mother even died. I didn't cry when Margaret showed me the email. I'd used up all my tears for Gerald a long time ago. Instead, I felt something cold and clear settle in my chest. Not revenge. Resolution. The confrontation came on graduation night, not high school. My MBA graduation from Duke's Fuqua School of Business. I was 25. Gerald didn't know I'd been accepted to Duke. He didn't know I'd earned a full fellowship. He didn't know anything about my life because I'd cut off all communication with him after leaving for UNC Charlotte at 18. But my stepbrother Colton, who I'd maintained a cautious, sporadic text relationship with over the years, mentioned that Gerald was bragging at a neighborhood barbecue about the family tradition of excellence. After Colton graduated from a local community college, I decided that my MBA graduation would be the night everything came to light. Not because I wanted to humiliate Gerald at my own celebration, because Gerald had been nominated for the Charlotte Business Alliance's Community Builder of the Year award, and the ceremony happened to fall on the same weekend. Saturday night. The Westin Hotel Ballroom. 300 of Charlotte's most prominent business leaders, investors, and developers in one room. And Julian Cross, as the Alliance's largest donor, was giving the keynote. Gerald had no idea Julian was my father. He had no idea I even knew Julian existed. I arrived at the Westin at 7:15 p.m., wearing a black floor-length dress Julian had sent to my apartment that afternoon with a card that read, "For my daughter. The one who built herself from nothing. Dad." It was the first time he'd signed anything as Dad. The ballroom was stunning. White tablecloths, crystal centerpieces, a stage with a massive screen displaying the Alliance logo, 300 guests mingling with champagne flutes. And there, near the center of the room, stood Gerald Ashford. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than 6 months of my waitressing income. Vanessa was beside him in emerald green, laughing too loudly at something a banking executive said. Colton stood slightly behind them, uncomfortable in his tie, scrolling on his phone. Then Gerald saw me. The champagne flute stopped halfway to his mouth. His eyes tracked from my face to the man standing beside me. Julian Cross, silver-haired, impeccably dressed, his hand resting lightly on my shoulder. I watched the confusion move across Gerald's face like weather. Surprise, suspicion, then something worse, recognition. He saw the resemblance. My eyes. Julian's eyes. The same eyes. The same eyes. He set his champagne down and crossed the room in 4 long strides. "What the hell are you doing here?" "I was invited," I said. "My father is the keynote speaker." The word father landed like a slap. Gerald's face went white. "That's impossible," he said. "You've known the truth since I was 4 years old, Gerald. The only impossible thing is that you thought it would stay buried forever." People were watching now. Conversations trailing off. Phones appearing. Gerald turned to Julian. You put her up to this. I didn't put anyone up to anything, Julian said calmly. I found out I had a daughter 3 years ago. I've spent every day since trying to make up for 22 years of not knowing she existed. What's your excuse? Gerald's jaw clenched. Vanessa appeared at his elbow, her social radar pinging. Gerald, what's going on? Nothing. We're leaving. No, I said. You're staying. Because if you leave now, you'll miss the part that matters. The MC tapped the microphone. The program was starting. Julian squeezed my hand once, then walked to the stage with the easy stride of a man who'd addressed 1,000 rooms. He adjusted the microphone, looked out over the crowd and smiled. Thank you all for being here tonight. The Charlotte Business Alliance has done remarkable work building this community over the past 2 decades. I'm honored to be part of it. Applause. Gerald had retreated to his table, Vanessa gripping his arm, Colton looking confused. Tonight I want to talk about something personal, Julian continued. About what it means to build something real versus building a facade. The room shifted. This wasn't the standard donor speech. 3 years ago, I received a letter from a young woman I'd never met. She was a college student working as a waitress, paying her own way through school because the man who was supposed to be her guardian had refused to support her. She'd uncovered a secret that her mother had kept for over 2 decades. Julian looked directly at me. That young woman is here tonight. She's my daughter. Her name is Seraphina Cole, and I'd like her to join me on stage. The walk felt like it took an hour. 300 faces. 300 pairs of eyes. I kept my chin up and my shoulders back, the same way I did when I carried plates through a crowded restaurant, the same way I did when Gerald told me I wasn't worth the food I ate. Julian took my hand and pulled me gently to his side. Seraphina spent 22 years in a household that didn't want her. She was denied basic financial support. She paid for her own AP exams, her own phone, her own prom dress. She worked 30 hours a week through high school and college. She graduated summa cum laude from UNC Charlotte and just completed her MBA at Duke Fuqua on a full fellowship. Murmurs. Impressed glances. I saw reporters scribbling. She did all of this without a single dollar of help from the man who claimed to be her father, a man who, it turns out, was draining a trust fund her grandmother had left for her education. The murmurs turned to gasps. I saw Gerald's table. His face was gray. Vanessa's hand was over her mouth. Colton had put his phone down entirely. My attorney, Margaret Liu, has documented the full extent of the financial mismanagement. Julian gestured to the side of the stage, where Margaret stood in a navy suit, her expression composed and lethal. I'll let her provide the details. Margaret stepped to the microphone. Good evening. I represent Seraphina Cole in a matter involving breach of fiduciary duty by her former guardian. The evidence shows that over a period of 6 years, her trustee withdrew $52,000 in cash and took out a $75,000 line of credit against trust assets, totaling $127,000 in misappropriated funds. 3 authorization documents bear forged signatures. Legal proceedings will be filed Monday morning in Mecklenburg County Court. The ballroom erupted. Gerald stood so fast his chair hit the floor. This is a lie, he shouted. This is a coordinated attack. Julian Cross has been trying to destroy my business for years, and now he's using this girl to finish the job. The room went silent. This girl, Julian repeated, his voice dropping to something cold, is my daughter. The one you just called a stranger's kid at her own graduation dinner. The one you made sleep in a garage with no heat. The one whose college fund you stole to pay for baseball camps and kitchen countertops. I raised her, Gerald's voice cracked. I put a roof over her head for 18 years. You put a roof over a child you resented for 18 years, I said into the sudden quiet. I hadn't planned to speak, but the words came anyway, steady and clear. You didn't raise me, Gerald, you tolerated me. There's a difference. Someone in the crowd clapped. Then another. then a wave of applause that filled the ballroom. Gerald looked around the room at 300 people who had just watched him publicly confirm everything Julian had said. He had called me a stranger's kid. He had admitted he'd been counting the years until he could stop supporting me. He had done Julian's work for him. "You planned this," Gerald whispered, staring at me. "You've been planning this for years." "No," I said. "I've been surviving for years. The planning only started when I found out you'd been stealing from me." Gerald and Vanessa left through the kitchen entrance. No one tried to stop them. No one followed. The lawsuit was filed the following Monday. Margaret Liu didn't mess around. Within 3 weeks, Gerald's attorney called to negotiate. They settled for full repayment of the $127,000, plus $18,000 in accrued interest, plus $15,000 in legal fees. Gerald also agreed to surrender all remaining trust assets. Total recovery, $214,000. I didn't attend the signing. I didn't need to see his face. The professional fallout was swift. The Charlotte Business Alliance rescinded Gerald's community builder nomination. His 2 largest banking partners pulled their lines of credit within a month. Ashford Commercial Partners lost 3 pending contracts when clients cited concerns about corporate governance. By September, Gerald had sold the company to a regional competitor for a fraction of its peak value. I didn't celebrate his destruction. I didn't feel triumph or vindication. What I felt was something quieter. The absence of dread. For the first time in my life, I woke up in the morning without that tight knot in my stomach, the one that had lived there since I was 12 years old. Listening to Gerald tell my mother I wasn't his child. 2 months after the settlement, Colton texted me. I'd given him my number years ago, but he'd rarely used it. "Sierra." I didn't know about any of it. The money. The trust. None of it. "I'm sorry I never asked why things were different for you. I should have seen it." I stared at the message for a long time. Colton was 22 now. Old enough to have noticed. Young enough that I couldn't blame him entirely for the world Gerald had constructed around him. "Thank you for saying that," I typed back. "I'm not ready to talk about it yet, but it means something that you reached out. Whenever you're ready, I'll be here." I saved his number. Maybe someday we'd rebuild something. But not yet. Julian and I had dinner every other week. Sometimes in Charlotte, sometimes in Atlanta. The conversations got easier over time, less like interviews and more like family. We discovered we both hated cilantro. Both loved old jazz records. Both had a habit of tapping our left foot when we were thinking. He offered to pay off my student loans. I said no. He offered to fund a business venture. I said no. He offered to buy me a car. I said no. "You're the most stubborn person I've ever met," he told me over sushi one evening, half frustrated, half proud. "I spent 22 years proving I don't need anyone to survive. I'm not going to stop now. It's not about survival anymore, Sarah. It's about letting people in. I'm letting you in. I'm here, aren't I?" He smiled. "Yeah, you are. But I need to build my own thing, with my own hands. That's who I am." He nodded slowly. "Your mother raised one hell of a woman. She did her best. If you ever need anything at all, I know. And that's enough." 6 months after the settlement, Gerald sent me an email. Subject line, "Can we talk?" I read it once. It was 3 sentences long. He said he'd had time to reflect. He said he wanted to explain. He said he hoped I'd give him a chance. I forwarded it to Margaret Liu and asked her to send a response on firm letterhead. The response was simple. "Mr. Ashford, Ms. Cole has received your communication. She has asked me to convey the following. You had 22 years to treat me like a human being. You chose not to. You knew the truth and used it as an excuse for cruelty. You stole from my inheritance. You tried to erase me from your life before my mother was even gone. I do not want your explanations. I do not want your apology. I want you to leave me alone. This is not revenge. This is a boundary. Do not contact me again. Seraphina Cole." He never responded. I don't know if he was angry or relieved. I didn't care. Some doors need to stay closed. Forgiveness doesn't mean you have to reopen them. Sometimes forgiveness just means walking away and building a life so full that the people who hurt you become footnotes. I'm 26 now. I work in commercial development in Charlotte, not for Julian's company, not for anyone connected to Gerald, just a small firm where I'm learning the business from the ground up. I'm saving to start my own company someday. I have the trust money, my savings, and a plan. That's all I've ever needed. Julian visits every other Sunday. We get brunch at this little cafe off East Boulevard, always the same table by the window. He orders eggs Benedict. I order avocado toast. We talk about work and life, and the slow, strange process of becoming family after 22 years of being strangers. Last month, on my 26th birthday, he brought a small cake to my apartment. Chocolate, my favorite. We sat on my second-hand couch, ate cake with plastic forks, and watched the sunset through my kitchen window. Happy birthday, Sierra. Thanks, Dad. It was the second time I'd called him that. His eyes glistened, but he didn't make a big deal of it. Neither did I. Some things don't need a spotlight. Here's what I learned from 22 years of being invisible in my own home. Your worth is not determined by the people who refuse to see it. Gerald looked at me every day for 18 years and saw nothing but a reminder of his wife's past. But his blindness was never my deficiency. I was always more than what he was willing to acknowledge. Boundaries are not cruelty. They are survival. Cutting Gerald out of my life wasn't about punishing him. It was about protecting the peace I'd spent 22 years earning. I don't owe anyone access to my life just because they share a dining table history with me. And family isn't about obligation. It's about choice. Julian and I share DNA. But what makes him my father is the fact that he shows up. Every other Sunday. Rain or shine. No strings, no agenda. No conditions. If you're watching this and you've ever been the one who was overlooked, the one who got the $25 gift card while your sibling got the $1,200 computer, the one who slept in the room with no heat while everyone else was comfortable, I see you. Your chapter isn't over. The people who made you feel small don't get to decide how your story ends. You do. Now I want to hear from you. If you were in my shoes, would you have responded to Gerald's email? Drop a yes in the comments if you would have given him a chance, or no if you think some doors should stay locked. And please, if this story meant something to you, subscribe and hit the notification bell. I'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves.